Tom Farrell, welcome back to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for inviting me.
And congratulations on being named one of three finalists for Writer of the Year.
Well, thanks. It's quite an
You,
honor.
you bet the last time we had you on was just a little over 3 years ago when you were one of three finalists for what was then Independent Writer of the Year, back when RMFW had two groups, one Writer of the Year, one Independent Writer of the Year, but those have been merged in the intervening years. So I imagine it feels pretty good to be one of the three finalists for the whole group.
Yes, it is. And I'm glad that they put the two together. I don't think there's as much of a line between traditional and indie as there used to be. It's really become blurred.
Totally blurred. I was thinking about that this week and just in, I don't know where it was in preparation for something else. I was having another discussion and just thinking about, we all basically need the same set of skills in every single aspect of the business, from putting a sentence together, putting a scene together, putting a chapter together. And then once you finish a book, then the big crossroads, deciding where and how to put it out. Even then, you still need marketing. You still need to know the ins and outs of the business right on down the line.
Yeah, from my understanding, even traditional published books, you have to market a lot of it yourself and build your own platform and a lot of those things that go into it.
Yeah. How did you find out about getting the Writer of the Year nomination?
Oh, I found out from an email from Andre.
And what was your reaction?
Well, I was quite surprised. So uh, I think I knew that I had been nominated by one of my friends from a critique group. So
Nice, nice, nice.
I know
Well,
there's always a lot of competition.
yes, indeed. Well, for those who don't know or didn't listen to the last chat, and the last time we had you on, there were two other independent Writer of the Year finalists. We had Andre Gonzalez on and Helen Starbuck, and you told a little bit about your writing journey, and you just mentioned critique groups, and I know how important critique groups were to you, but could you just take us through your writing origin story, so to speak, and how long you've been writing fiction and what sort of brought you along?
Well, I've always written even while I was working and didn't really have much success. And although I would try to get an agent and that sort of thing. And I did have an agent in the early 2000s with another book that has not been published. And we didn't get anywhere with that book. And then I continued writing, and I was in critique groups in the after I retired from practicing law in the mid 2010, like 2014, 2015 timeframe. And I was in two critique groups, Mystery Writers Critique Group and RMFW Critique Group. So I really got a lot of different perspectives on my writing, and it continued to improve. And the first book in my series is called Wager Tough. And I did a cold query to an agent in towards the end of 2015, and they did read the book and decided to take it. It was a yes with Bob DeForio, the DeForio Literary Agency, and Bob had been around for years, and
Sure.
so he took it to market in early 2016, and we didn't get any deals. So I was back to writing another book. And so I was writing another book on a what if basis. And the what if was what if sports betting were to be legalized? What would happen? And while I was writing that book, the Supreme Court heard oral argument at the end of 2017 and then issued their opinion, setting aside the PASPA, the federal law that prohibited sports betting, in May of 2018. So while I was writing the book, the change actually took place that I was writing about.
Yeah. Yep.
So my critique group at the time thought that I had some kind of crystal ball or something going on.
Yeah. And what became of that project?
And that book became WagerEasy, which is the second book in the series. And so those two books I published in 2021. And basically that I started, publishing is a long process. You got to get an editor, you got to get a copy editor, you have to get a cover person, a format person, because I don't know how to format. I've sat in on the critique sessions, but they're way over my head on formatting. So since it was during the pandemic, it finally got out in right towards the end of the pandemic. In February of 2021, I published WagerEasy, and then July of 2021, Wager Tough.
And then Wager Smart is the third one. Is that right? Am I getting them in the right order?
That's right. Wager Smart is the third one, and that came out last year on Halloween, October 3rd. Why I picked Halloween, I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's not a horror novel by any means, but
Yeah.
October 31st. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've had some excellent, outstanding reviews.
Yes, I've been very lucky to have starred reviews from Kirkus on each book. Wager Tough was the best indie book, best indie mystery thriller, and best indie book of 2021 by Kirkus. And Wager Smart was an editor's pick and starred review by Kirkus. And it also is an Indies Today finalist for their book award.
Wow. Now that seems like, given the volume of books out there, that is a huge honor.
Yeah, from what I understand, starred reviews only about 10% of the books submitted to Kirkus, and they only you have the if you're an indie writer, you have the right not to have that review published. So
Right.
there's only so many reviews that get published, and then there's only so many that get a starred review.
And yeah, when you get the draft back from Kirkus, should we publish this or not? I think it's pretty much a slam dunk in your case. Publish.
If you see a star, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
actually, you don't see the star, I don't think, until you publish.
Ah,
I can't
okay,
remember,
gotcha.
but
Yeah.
you can tell it's a good review. So
Yeah. Now, this is just sort of a strange question, but I would think, given the reviews and 3 stars from Kirkus, that you might be able to turn around and go to an agent and say, here's my next project and look at how well my past work did. Is that, are you thinking about maybe going a traditional route with your next project if you have one underway? Is that, I mean, that seems like such a strong element in your resume or your query letter, your cover letter, to say, look how good I am.
yeah, it's sort of I have the trifecta with 3 stars, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Kirkus actually told me, they said, we rarely have any series getting 3 stars. So I may use that to talk to some agents
Wow.
to see what they think. What would be very beneficial is the foreign rights on the book, because gambling is such a international activity, and
Yeah.
as well as horse racing, sports betting, and so I think that might be a real area of opportunity.
Yeah. So Kirk has reached out to you and said, we rarely have 3 books in a series that we've given stars to, all 3 stars to.
That's right.
Did they sent you an email?
Well, I was talking to one of their representatives.
Wow. Wow. That's really cool. I think anybody in the business who writes books and pays attention knows that is a fact. It's hard to get 1 star. It's hard to get a star from Kirkus on a review, let alone for 3 books in a row. That is just outstanding. Yeah.
And as an indie writer, it gives you more momentum
Yeah.
to keep going.
Yeah.
So,
Take us through the books. Give us a sense of the character, where they're set, how they're connected.
okay. Each book features Eddie O'Connell and his uncle, Mike O'Connell. And his uncle, Mike O'Connell, is a former Chicago homicide detective. And together, they solve murders for the mob's gambling boss, Rosario Burrascano. So therefore, they end up solving murders set in the world of gambling. So in Wager Tough, in the first book, Eddie has his first solo job. Now, Eddie's a problem gambler. So you're having a first-person protagonist who has a problem gambling, and he's in the gambling world. So you really get this feedback of what it's like to gamble from a first-person perspective. When you're actually putting money down, will you bet? How much? What does that bet look like to you? Basically, a lot of people don't get the chance to look at the problems with gambling. They see a little scroll along the bottom of a sports betting ad saying, call this number, but that's not anything really. So it's not all glitz and glamour when you lose money. So anyway, in Wager Tough, Eddie O'Connell has his first solo job for Burrascano, in part to discount some of the debt he's owed and has racked up to his bookie. And his job is to go ahead and find out who killed a mob-connected bookie. And so Eddie steps into the bookie's shoes and helps run the bookie's operation, along with the assistance of the assistant manager, Rudy, who's Paula Rudinger, who's kind of a love interest. And so taking over that job, he has to actually collect debts as a way to discover suspects. And collecting gambling debts, when you owe gambling debts and you're a gambler yourself, becomes interesting. And then he finds that some of the suspects are at the Kelso Club, which is a simulcast gambling facility for high rollers. And this is set in 2014, before legalization. So you see some of what sports betting was when it was all undercover and part of, well, basically it was a crime back then. And then WagerEasy is set in 2018, when sports betting is about to be legalized state by state. And in that case, an old friend of Eddie's has been murdered in gruesome mob style. Jimmy Golding was a friend of Eddie's from the racetrack. So in this case, Burrascano is being framed for this murder. So Eddie and Uncle Mike take the case. Eddie especially is glad to take the case because the victim is his old friend. So it turns out that Burrascano had a deal with this guy who was murdered, who worked for WagerEasy, which is a European gambling operator. A lot of European gambling operators like FanDuel or DraftKings, those are actually European companies that bought those fantasy sites. So in a way, WagerEasy is the big gambling operator that has come to Chicago to try to get a foothold in the market.
Gotcha.
So it goes from there. And then in Wager Smart, Eddie and Uncle Mike are retained by the owner of the racetrack in Chicago, the fictional racetrack, Thornton Racetrack, Arlene Adams. She asks Eddie and Uncle Mike to look into the disappearance of her old husband, Paul the Pastor Pearson, Porter the Pastor Pearson, who has disappeared long ago. And the deacon, his former partner, the hitman's former partner, the deacon, is willing to meet and talk about how he disappeared. And the meeting's going to take place in Vegas because that's where the deacon is. That's where the deacon wants to meet during the Super Bowl in 2020. And as it turns out, the teams in 2020 were the same teams that played this year, Kansas City and San Francisco. And how that happened, I mean, I had no way of putting that together.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, very good. So is there a fourth book on the way?
Yes, I do have a fourth book that I am working on. And well, that'll take place more in real time back in Chicago, which is where Eddie and Uncle Mike are from. And so I'm working on that one now. It's called Wager Late.
Wager Late.
Yeah.
Wow. So do the law enforcement authorities come around during all these homicides and various investigations, or is this a, pursuing sort of just the whodunit aspect? Is this all done just within the world of the gambling folks themselves?
No, the detectives are part of it.
Okay.
In Wager Tough, there's a detective who gets involved, and in WagerEasy, Uncle Mike's old partner Liz is handling the homicide investigation. And in Wager Smart, again, Uncle Mike knows the detectives in Vegas because he played poker with them, and he has a lot of retired friends who are in Vegas.
Gotcha.
So Uncle Mike's job is to kind of get to know, buddy up with the detectives so they can get some more information from their side of things.
Wow. What would you say, to somebody who, I mean, it does sound like you've been writing for a long time before you finally brought out your first book, and you had that agent back in the early 2000s and tried to sell a book, and you just kept at it. But what are the things you think you learned about putting a story together and bringing characters to life on the page that has really made you so successful?
That's a good question. I'll tell you, one of the game changers for me was talking with developmental editors, and they said that this seems like something that would be much better if you had first person as opposed to third person, because I was writing in third person on some of these later books. And I started writing in first person, and it really came much more alive because you get a lot more of this gambler's perspective into the world.
And what did that change about the way you were able to tell the story? I mean, some people say first person is limiting because you can only know what your character knows. You can't suddenly jump out of first person and bring in new information without that character knowing that information.
I know, but I think that the point of those restrictions make you less creative, makes you more lazy as a writer, because sure, you can always write from the point of view of the killer and give some cheap thrills. But when you don't know the answer, when you're like the protagonist, when you're in that protagonist's viewpoint of first person, and you can't find out these things, it's so frustrating that you are forced to read to the end. And it is about turning the page.
Yeah. Are there any writers out there now or from past decades whose voice you go back to and study or look at or inspire your own writing voice?
Well, a lot of the crime novelists like Dennis Lehane, George Pelecanos, Michael Connelly, those are the ones that I find interesting. I'm looking for interesting issues and perspectives. There's usually a lot of law that comes into play. For example, in legalization, there were a lot of things depended upon what kind of laws was Illinois going to pass, for example.
Yeah.
So those are some of the writers that I kind of like, but I don't think any of them do first person really that I can think of.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So just switching to first person sort of felt like a more comfortable voice for you to write in.
It did, because you can then bring in so much more as to what's at stake for the gambler.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Would
hard
you,
to communicate that. So
yeah. Would you say these are cautionary tales about the world of professional gambling, or are these do the books take a side in terms of the societal pros and cons of gambling?
no, they're cautionary tales. For
Okay.
example, at one point, Eddie says uh, they set the point spread in Vegas with all the precision of the Norden bomb site, and I did get bombed. So,
Yeah. Seems like very few gamblers actually win.
well, it's been pointed out that those sports bettors that do win against certain operators who are legal then get shut off. Well, they don't get shut off, but their bets are limited to a very small amount.
Yeah.
And you'll find out that in Vegas, the sportsbook managers who I've interviewed, part of their job is to identify those bettors who are the sharp bettors. And the sharp bettors will send runners and that sort of thing. And they've got to know who those people are.
Wow.
And because they're not going to take their action.
Which should tell you right away that this is not for the average person. It's probably not going to be a endeavor that ends up in the black. You're going to end up in the red.
Right. They're after the sucker money.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Um, well, one thing we wanted to talk about was the master class you're going to be teaching at Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers Colorado Gold Conference, right? Coming up this September on audiobook production.
Yes, I'm excited about it. I went ahead and produced my own audiobooks. I guess you call it produced. Uh, I'm
Sure.
not a producer necessarily or anything,
Yes,
but
you are. Yeah, yes, you are.
yeah. So I now have audiobooks for each book in the series, and that was when I started. I said, well, where do I even begin? Because I felt now I better do it because they're seeing year over year double-digit growth in audiobooks. Uh, a lot of people are trying audiobooks. Spotify got into the business with a big investment buying Findaway Voices, which was a major distributor. So now Spotify is making the audiobooks available to their 200 million premium members. That's in addition to other retailers like Audible and Apple Books, and it goes on and on.
Right. So how did you go about it? How did you go about recording? How did you go about putting it all together? And which platform did you use to upload?
Well, at the time, it was very interesting because I had been to a couple of sessions at RMFW and other conferences, and I did know a little bit, but I didn't know much. I mean, I didn't know exactly how to get this audition process going. Was I going to go on ACX? Was I going to go on Find a Way? How was I going to find the right narrator for me and for Eddie's first person thoughts and the dialogue? And we got all these different characters going on. And how am I going to bring this to life? So I basically asked a consultant, Susan Brooks. Susan Brooks, or Susie, has been around RMFW for a long time. And
Oh, a couple of years.
she has her own publishing house, Literary Wanderlust. And so she consulted with me, and we went the ACX route. And I prepared the snippets, a couple of pages with some various voices that I thought might be good and for the audition sample. And we ended up having 50 auditions, 50 narrators submitted.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we looked at them, and Susie was the one who really picked out Josh Innerst, my narrator. And a word about Josh. In the master class, Josh will be there to talk about audiobook narration and how he does it, and how he brings in the subtext of the story, and how he gets the stakes of the for the characters into the story. So he's enhancing my vision and bringing this story to life. And how better to do it than to have like a conversation with me and Josh. And now I've asked Susie to join us as well, because we will also be talking about the audition process and going on ACX, and then moving it over to Find a Way, being non-exclusive and going wide. And I'll talk some about the legal end of it with contracts and retailers and advertising marketing. So.
Wow, that sounds like a really thorough class. Did you, in terms of working with Josh, did you just do a straight up royalty split? How did you work the arrangements there?
No, there's no split. It's just I paid his fee, and that's.
Oh, gotcha. You paid a per hour fee then, which is another option. Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. Yeah. Yep.
And Josh has had experience with HarperCollins Audio, Penguin Random House Audio, and he's won an Earphones Award.
Wow.
And he's a actor. He was recently in a film with that hasn't come out yet with Robert De Niro.
Well, there you go.
And he teaches Shakespeare performance. I got that right. Shakespeare performance at Oberlin.
In Ohio. Yeah.
In Ohio, yes.
Yeah. And he's flying out for the conference.
That's right.
That's fantastic. Wow.
So it's a real opportunity to hear how things go from the narrator end. And even if you're not going to produce your own audiobooks, you want to know what makes a good audiobook.
Yep. Yep.
So I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah. So folks, if you're listening to this now and registration is now open for Colorado Gold, don't overlook those master classes and really enhance your whole conference experience, because that's a great way to really sink into a topic and learn some more in addition to all the great stuff that's going to be at the conference. So great suggestion there. That's fantastic. Really good. Well, this has been just a great rundown of your world, Tom, and what's going on. Sounds like you are enjoying being you've got 3 books out there and you're just continuing to plow ahead.
I do. I've persevered, so to speak. And
Yeah.
I'm even going to critique tonight with some pages from my fourth book in the series.
Is that the same critique group you've always been going to on the RMFW side or on the mystery side?
On both.
Yeah.
Although on the mystery side, we do have some people now who have moved out of state. So we do the Zoom session with that.
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, can you look back at the, point at which you had that agent and you were shopping a book that never got sold? And can you think, now where you are and just appreciate how far you've come?
I told my agent, Bob DeForio, after I had published and got a Kirkus Reviews and that, I sent him an email and I said, if you would not have taken one of my books, I probably would have just said, oh, well, they're just not good enough. And maybe I wouldn't have taken this indie route. But because we were rejected and because we had some nice comments and that sort of thing, he shared the comments from the editors, the New York editors, and they were good comments. It was just, market forces. But because of that, that made me decide to let's go ahead and do this indie thing.
That's great. Wow. Well, as we wrap up, we always like to shine a light on another writer or author, a book, maybe somebody you'd like to promote, just to pass it along.
Okay, yes, I would, Mark. Right now I'm reading Speaking Out of Turn by Carla M.J., which is the third book in her Speaking in Tongues series, which is a humorous series about a young speech pathologist just learning the ropes. And it's just a lot of fun. You can laugh almost on every page. And then another book by Dallas Jones called Wyo Nation, which is a political thriller. And Wyo Nation involves basically Wyoming has been expelled from the United States because they don't have enough population and maybe their politics aren't just right. And it gets into a lot of cutting edge issues that we have today. And then an audio book by Josh called Baseball Dads by Matthew S. Hiley. And Josh won the Earphones Award for Baseball Dads.
Wow.
And so that one's a lot of fun, although it's a wild one. Let me put it that way. So, and then I have one more thing for you, because the Derby's coming up this Saturday. So you should be asking me who's my Derby pick.
I guess this means I have to get the podcast up before Saturday, but no pressure on me, huh? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, the pressure's on me. What if I'm wrong?
Okay, who's your Derby pick?
Okay, Honor Marie is the name of the Derby pick, and so it'll be a long shot. I always like to go with the long shot. Who wants to bet the favorite, right? So
yeah. Are you flying out?
I'm not. I'll just have to bet it the old simulcast way. So
Gotcha. Well, that's great. Well, nobody needs to bet on your future. It looks pretty solid and very bright. So
thanks a lot, Mark.
congratulations again, and thanks for your time on the podcast.
Thanks again. I look forward to seeing you at the conference too.
You bet.